If you or a loved one are struggling with type 2 diabetes, you should visit the link in the description below. This clinically proven, drug-free program lowers blood sugar to a normal level and can completely reverse type 2 diabetes within just a few weeks. Here's today's video.
The question, why is sugarcane suitable for diabetes but sugar is bad for diabetes? Answer by Stephen Hutchison. Question with embedded incorrect information is why is sugarcane suitable for diabetes but sugar is bad for diabetes? First off, sugar isn't bad for diabetes. That's a very simplistic way to say it, and it has created many opportunities for nonsense knowledge that does more harm than good. Diabetes is a collection of diseases with similar symptoms. The word itself refers to sweet urine because someone with uncontrolled diabetes has too much sugar in their circulatory system, lymph and blood, and the kidneys try to get rid of the excess by flushing it out through the bladder. There are two direct causes, which are not the root causes of the disease. There are many root causes, not all of them well understood yet. There is a hormone created in the human body, and most mammals' bodies, and other creatures as well, which is called insulin, and which is the dominant hormone controlling how the body uses blood sugar, also called blood glucose. Insulin causes cells that want to use glucose for fuel, to bring that glucose in from the blood and burn it for fuel. It also causes fat cells to suck up excess amounts of triglyceride, the storable form of fats that the liver can create from sugars or turn back into sugars and other kinds of fuel. Normally, insulin tells different parts of the body burn this sugar or store or release triglycerides, depending on some other internal hormones. For completely insulin-dependent diabetics, the body cannot create insulin, or enough insulin, because the cells that do so have been killed or suppressed. There are multiple causes for this. Insulin-dependent diabetics will die in short order, a few weeks to a month, if they do not take insulin, and not just that, but the right amount of insulin at the right time before eating. People who tell them otherwise should be locked up in prison for attempted murder, but seldom are. For non-insulin-dependent diabetics, the body may or may not create enough insulin, but in the beginning of the disease, it usually can, and often overproduces in response to the sugary blood. But for various reasons, some of which we know and many of which are simply speculation, not proven, scientific research hasn't shown that the models are correct, etc., the body becomes resistant to insulin. This means that it either requires more insulin to do the job, or it just says meh, I don't care when insulin hits various tissues. The usual medication protocol for non-insulin-dependent diabetics is to take drugs which increase the body's sensitivity to insulin, and sometimes to take additional insulin through injections. The side effects of both kinds of diabetes, and the risk factors, are pretty much similar. High blood sugar suppresses the immune system, damages some tissues over time, and generally promotes inflammation, and prolonged inflammation is a very bad thing. Now to answer the question. Sugar is not innately bad for diabetics. Sugar that goes quickly into the bloodstream from the gut causes blood sugar swings, which can be dangerous, especially if there's too much of it. This means that diabetics are safer eating meals with fewer carbohydrates overall, and with the kinds of carbohydrate that are absorbed into the body more slowly rather than more quickly. This does not mean diabetics cannot eat sugar, and it does not mean that any form of sugar that turns into glucose is worse than any other form of sugar. Sugarcane is not a super dense form of sugar. Eating a palm length of sugarcane will probably be no worse than eating a slice or two of whole wheat bread, or a small apple. Nor is a teaspoon of sugar going to be deadly dangerous to a diabetic. Even a small candy bar, as opposed to a giant-sized Snickers bar, is not going to do much damage, as long as the diabetic has enough insulin and is doing things that will burn up the sugar. Otherwise, just like regular non-diabetic people, the sugars will be dumped out of the body one way or another, or the body will store them in the form of fat inside fat cells, depending on the metabolism of the individual person. Some studies suggest but haven't proven that as you gain more fat, your body decides to store more fat, because of course it does. The fat cells become needy and demanding. People will, however, tell you all about how you should be eating and behaving if you're diabetic, some of them going so far as to tell you to eat this or that magical food and it will all go away. We call these people dangerous shysters or suckers who listen to bad advice, who need to shut the F up because their advice can kill you. Answer by Tally Adams. Sugar is sugar. It doesn't matter if it's cane, granulated, or syruped. The body does not know the difference. In fact, Even flour does the same exact thing in the body that sugar does, because as soon as you chew any flour or carbohydrate, the first thing your body does is turn it into sugar. Diabetic control is not about sugar control, but carbohydrate control. A regular PCP tends to really gloss over and not give enough education for diabetic control. Diabetic education and an endocrinologist is essential to learn to control those numbers and remain free of complications. Answer by Chip Morgan. I had seen this folklore before, along with some other well-known gems about diabetes. Honey is better than sugar. Wrong. Brown sugar is better for you than white sugar. Wrong. Wheat bread is better than white bread. Also wrong. These are examples of the erroneous information that has been promulgated by the diabetes nutrition industry and the medical profession over the years. The fact is, fructose is processed by the liver and contributes to fatty liver disease. Most type 2 diabetics also have fatty liver disease, so why would you continually process fructose directly in the liver? The other indisputable fact is that sugar, in all its forms, raises glucose levels, which in turn causes the body to respond by making more insulin to keep the blood sugar levels in balance, homeostasis. This excess presence of insulin is what causes type 2 diabetes by causing cellular resistance to insulin. In type 1 diabetes, the body does not produce enough insulin, so it is supplemented artificially, either by pill, injection or both. Ironically, even type 1 diabetics become essentially type 2 diabetics, due to continually putting too much insulin into the body, causing insulin resistance and a raise in blood sugar. Type 1 diabetics deal with this by increasing the dose of insulin ingested. The old saying "the dose causes the poison" is never more accurate than with diabetes, whether type 1 or type 2. Increasing insulin is never an optimal solution. A far better approach is to limit carbohydrates so blood glucose doesn't rise as much, thereby lessening the need for insulin. Adding carbohydrates by consuming sugar in any form is the worst thing any diabetic can do. I encourage everyone to read Dr. Jason Fung's latest book, The Diabetes Code. He explains this whole thing clearly and concisely, offering scientific proof of all the above.